the fog of war yesterday, I forgot to take all my pills. That doesn't happen very often. It must have been the incoming. It scared me or something. By the way, where's Matt? Matt, I had forgotten completely that you had hair down to here. I mean, I must have blocked it out. But now that I can visualize, and for the YouTube, Matt, who's here for the second time, gave about an hour a talk to the guys on a webinar and to the number of the mentees that are hooked in on the webinar. And it's not a webinar for the YouTube. And then sometime during the presentation towards the end, he was talking about how it was before and why he came back a second time, even though he was pushing forward with QLA methodology before he ever came here in April of last year. But then he mentioned that he had long hair. I would appreciate if you can give me a picture. In fact, during lunchtime, if you can go get them to copy that picture, because this group's not bad, but most of the groups that come through look like dog shit. There's at least 2 or 3 guys that need a bullet put in their head. And because I don't care how successfully they implement or attempt to implement this stuff, perception will be reality, and they'll never get past how you look. Normally we have really, you saw dreadlocks, but we've had some real, heavy-duty, fucked-up-looking people that have the money and have some, and develop some level of, attain some level of success by your guys' standards, not by mine, but by you guys' standards, and they think that they can just, it's just like 20 years ago when I used to teach at the business schools. Everybody was always talking about how Richard Branson was dressed in running jogging suit. Every fucking class I taught, some dipshit in the 200 or 300 students would say, "Hey, yeah, Mr. P, Professor P," which I kind of like the sound of that. Professor P, but what about Richard Branson? And I'd say, well, when you have $1 billion, asshole, you can fucking wear a jogging suit. But then he got to be Sir Richard. And for those of you that are old enough to remember, his whole dress changed. Okay? Now he's representing the Queen and country. He doesn't wear a tie that often, but he wears a blazer and, he looks more the part. And when you use this and you're calling on banks and insurance companies, etc., you'll never get past how you look. Never. And I've given you a few examples yesterday how my kids have put the big guys back on their back foot because they came in. The guy was wearing golf clothes, the professional, and they were wearing their little outfits. And for the first 20 or 30 or 40 minutes, all they did was apologize for how they looked. I can't emphasize that enough. It doesn't matter if you're black, blue, yellow. Color has nothing to do with it. And i.e. Dreadlocks. I'm not sure we have anybody black on our board. But then again, I don't look at that. So I'm saying this. Jermaine, if you're listening, do we have any black guys, any brothers on the fucking board? Email me because I don't know if we do, because I don't. It's something that doesn't even enter my mind. But getting back to, we'll take a look at what Matt looked like. Questions, comments on Too Big to Fail. What did they say? What did he say when he looked out the fucking window, Chris?
Of course they will.
Yeah, of course they will put the money out. And of course they didn't. That whole thing was based on, of course they'll put the money out. Anybody that had a modicum of common sense or brains would have known they're not going to put the money out. They didn't put the money out. And to this day, they're still not really putting the money out. And that's why there's such a tightening of credit. Oh, thank you. There's a tightening of credit at the small, medium enterprise level, the small businesses. There's not a tightening of credit for the big guys. There wasn't a tightening of credit then for the big guys, and it hasn't changed. But that whole movie and what happened to Lehman's, etc., I would have let everybody go down the shitter. And that's what real supply and demand economics is all about. And I hope this isn't coming from my lips to the Allah's ears, but with the energy and etc., the more you're hearing about is energy companies that are going to cut their dividend, laying off people, etc., etc. And having lived through 10,000 energy companies going out of business back in the day, in the 80s, it'll be more than 10,000 this time. And then the ripple effect of that, lay off a welder on a rig, he can't pay his rent, he can't buy groceries at the local such and such, he can't pay his mortgage, he can't pay for books, he can't pay tuition at perhaps if he's going to a private school, his kids are going to private school, and it just and the nightmare goes on and on and on. But that's perfect for us. Perfect, as they say in Scotland. Perfect. Any other commentary? I mean, yes?
They made a point that they were joining the banks, like the retail and the merchant banks, if I understood correctly, and that's making even bigger ones. So the last line of the text was also, there are now 10 banks that own something like 70% of all of the assets. They're too big for us. So what this implies to me is that they've just made the problem bigger. They've pushed it back.
Yeah, that's what we really did. We pushed off the problem. Just like I tell you, when you talk about the things that have happened to you, you get them on the table, you don't keep them under the table, and it becomes much more clear why you've done some of the things that you've done and because of your background. Well, they've now pushed that problem under the table now. When it happens again, it'll be exacerbated from when the government stepped in, and it'll be worse. And that's one of the reasons that the Fed has taken some crap about. Look what happened when they only increased the rates a quarter, 25 basis points. What the fuck would have happened if they increased it? Because those rates have gone up 100 basis points before. But they only did it 25 basis points, and look what happened. And so, and now they're worried, well, are they going to do that 3 or 4 times this year? Well, Christ, we can't, well, we can, but in the minds of the little guy, we can't take, 2,000 points down 3 or 4 times in a year. Yeah.
I guess just your point about, letting them fail. In the movie, they kind of portrayed it like, it would be pandemonium if they didn't step in. You're not going to have rest of the line was milk in the, the grocery store or whatever. But then, as you say, they didn't even put the money out anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah. Well, the presumption and what they were telling the president, they were going to put the money out. And that's what Bernanke and everybody. And I can assure you the country wouldn't have gone belly up. It would have been bad. Yeah, it would have been bad. But it would have been a cleansing process. It would have been a giant enema. And but everybody wants to get that's an exaggeration. You want to get reelected. The president doesn't want his legacy to be this. The first black president bankrupts the country. And even though it had started before him, his brothers are telling him, hey man, we can't take that fucking risk. I mean, we got our ass in here. And now the first time we're in here, we fucking bankrupt the country. All those stories about us, everybody's going to believe now. And it wasn't Obama's fault. And it wasn't Bush's fault before that. It's a fault of the system. A fault of the system. And why we have so many trillions of dollars in debt. And for the cab driver in New York City, of course now it's the Uber driver, I guess. They still have cabs, regular cabs? Yeah, well, the guy that's driving a car in New York City, he doesn't give a fuck about all that. All he wants to know is his little universe going to stay more or less the same? Is he going to be able to support his family, et cetera, et cetera? And and he, the country would have gone on. It would have been. I mean, we got through the Great Depression. It was shit, and I came after that. But my parents and probably some of your grandparents' generation still talk about that, and it scarred them a lot. And the Great Depression lasted, depending on who you want to talk to, between 8 and 12 years, depending on how you measure it. And some people say that we went into World War II to get us out of the Great Depression. Some people say that FDR pushed the Japanese to attack us, to know, so he could declare war and get the big war machine going. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But we don't normally just go out and put people in the Middle East, but normally we don't start wars and just shit. We need common consensus at the United Nations, or if somebody attacks us. So if that's true or not, the attack at Pearl Harbor certainly got us into that war, and we got the war machine going, and the economy turned around. But arguably, the economy was in a depression from the late 29, October, the famous, till 41, late 41. It's a long fucking time. It's a long time. Yeah, but it's a good movie, and especially because I know some of those guys, and I know the firms, and so the plot resonates different with me. Anything else? Yes, sir.
It was portrayed, and I don't know if this is accurate, but it was coming through a lot, that the Treasury Secretary just kept getting it wrong. Oh, we didn't know that the British couldn't buy it, and we didn't know that they didn't have time to.
That's a good point. That's a good point. They did.
They were almost portrayed as bad guys.
And so you're Secretary of Treasury, you've got a room, at least of these many guys advising you, either directly or indirectly on your staff. And these are smart guys, ostensibly. These aren't guys that just fell off the turnip truck, right? And if he was getting piss poor information, now some of that piss poor information was the lack, omission, not commission, omission. I like to think that there was no sin of commission there where they were trying to set the secretary up. I don't think that's the case. But when you guys are under the gun and emotional flooding, you're reporting back and you're studying stuff that you think is important. But what you think is important and what's actually important may be different. And that's why you have a staff of 15, 20, 30 economic advisors, because between the group, they're going to get it right or close to right. But a lot of the stuff that the Secretary of Treasury got was wrong. And so he based his assumptions or he based his decisions on bad information. And and he just kept, he could have, when he was zigging, he should have been zagging. But then again, just as I said, I didn't think that I'd ever see the economics of the energy business be where it is today again, because I've seen this once before. A lot of the guys, the economists et al., didn't think we'd ever see a depression again. And they were running around like chickens with their head cut off, trying to preclude the depression, because most of those guys didn't live through the depression, but they certainly fucking read about it, and their parents certainly lived through it, and so they didn't want to be associated in any way, shape, manner, or form. This fucking administration that brought the depression on. Plus a black administration. I mean, so because at the end of the day, everybody's worried about their legacy, except fucking
jerk, eat shit.
A few of us. Okay, YouTube. Oh, and a few of you cried because I didn't say, go fuck yourself. Thank you. See you later.